So the sheep milk Gouda, um, like I said, we make this with sheep milk, and we typically try to age it about a year to a year and a half. So you can see it's a little bit more crumbly. Um, it is a Gouda, very nice cheese that originated in Holland, and I believe Michael's got some pairings for it. But you'll have to try it to see what you think of it. The sheep milk gives it a little sweeter flavor than cow milk, but it's a very nice cheese, just like a cow milk Gouda is.
I've always been a really big fan of how unique Goudas can be. The sweetness of them, sometimes a little bit of tanginess, and then of course as they mature, the crystallization and maltiness and really rich flavors. So this is actually, I believe, the first sheep's milk Gouda that I've had a chance to try. And this is fabulous. The sheep's milk really brings out so much of that butter flavor. It's just so creamy. So I didn't want to really take it into something really large in the type of pairing. So I paired this up with Bonnie's Jams. And this is a really nice little apricot and orange. A little bit of citrus with that, which I thought would be really fun. And then I'm putting it on a rye Effie's biscuit. I wanted to give it a little bit of texture with it without getting into too much sweetness. And then pairing wise, there's a local brewery. This is Three Daughters, and this is a blonde ale, and this is Beach Blonde. And I thought that would be a lot of fun to put those guys together. So that's basically what I got, and really love this cheese. I think this is a fabulous combination.
Well, thank you. Yeah, like you were saying with Goudas, there are, if you look out there, there are a multitude of recipes. I mean, typically with most types of cheeses, like a cheddar or a blue, a Monterey Jack, or then let's say compare it to a Parmesan or something like that, there are different starter cultures you would usually use that the mesophiles you would typically use with like a cheddar or a Monterey Jack, or we use in a blue cheese, or the thermophiles you will usually use in like a Parmesan. Now, many of the recipes I have seen for Gouda will use a mesophilic starter culture. The one we actually started with was a thermophilic starter culture, and it worked very well for us using it with the sheep milk, and that's what we've gone for. But it's funny that you do have different flavors on Gouda, but you do see a lot of similarities, even though there are so many different varieties of starter cultures you use to make a Gouda. And of course, in the US, we pronounce it Gouda, when I believe in Holland, they pronounce it Gouda. But, we have to Americanize things. So this is a 2-year white cheddar. As I've said, we do make some cheddars yellow and some white. We typically, when we cut them to sell ourselves and sell them as 5-pound loaves, etc., for the distributors, to keep them separate, we usually cut a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year, 7-year as orange, and 2, 4, 6, 8 as white. Then we jump to 10, 12, 15, and we typically have both white and yellow in both the 10, 12, and 15. The 2-year is a very nice white cheddar, a lot milder than the more aged ones, but a lot of people like it. Many people like mild and medium cheddar, but for a milder white, they will go, they will try a mild or a 2-year cheddar. At this point, it doesn't have any crystallization. You usually start seeing the crystals at about 5, 6, 7 years. With the 2-year, you don't have that. You do start seeing a little of the acidity coming through, but it's still kind of creamy. As cheddars age, you get to 3, 4, and 5 year, and you typically would get to the most acidic bite for a cheddar. After that point, typically you'll start getting more calcium lactate crystals, but it will also start smoothing out and getting a little more creamy again. So the 2 year does have some sharpness, some flavor to it, but it isn't as sharp as the more aged cheddars.
I think the first thing, obviously, we do across the board. There's a tremendous amount of cheddars out there. And what distinguishes this is the amount of butter that you really get a taste in here. That butter, a little bit of sour cream, there's some lactic acid in there, so you get a little bit of tanginess. Really nice balance of flavors. It's just such a easy to enjoy cheddar. And it also brings out, like I said, that buttery flavor of it. And I think that that is what makes this really exceptional. So I'm pairing this up with some pepper jelly, and this is the Preservation Society. I really love that. It's 4 peppers, a little bit of vinegar, and gives it a little bit of tanginess. And I really enjoy that because there's a little bit of the tanginess that kind of comes across with that. And for the vehicle, well, I'm using a brewer's cracker, just sea salt, just something really simple. Didn't want to get into too much, but brewer's crackers really work well with the flavors of the cheddars because they have that real richness to there. And this is a pretty hefty cracker. So you can really kind of get a lot of flavor out of all of that together. And then to kind of wash it down, because I really like to have something that really does a good job of cleansing, because there's so much flavor in your cheddar. There's so much butter here that I really want something to kind of cut that. So the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is the direction that I like to go. It brings that, it's got a nice hoppiness that kind of brings a little bit of almost like a rosemary into the flavor. So adds a nice flavor and, really works pretty easy together.
Sounds good. Yes.
Yeah, I just, I'm really impressed with this. And when you think about the cheddars, what's your parameter that you use to say, okay, well, this can go to 15 years and this can go to 20 years? Do you start off with just your basic, or do you
just start off with a basic? And I try to do like they do when they're grading it or judging it at a contest. And I'll plug it, typically each vat of cheddar, I'll have a 40-pound block that I've saved for the sample block. And I'll plug that either once or twice a year, depending. And when I plug that, I'm just looking mainly, of course, you want good flavor in the cheddar, but I'm always looking to see if there's a hint of anything off. If there's a hint of something off, at that point, it's probably time to sell it. You don't want to start aging that and let any of that develop further. So you're just looking for the negatives, even though you're tasting the positives. You want to make sure there's nothing there that you wouldn't want in your cheddar. As it gets a little older, some defects that they kind of say when they're judging in a contest are like fruity, but with many of these cheeses, some of these things aren't really a defect if they aren't over pronounced. You might want something just a hair fruity just to give it a little flavor.
Yeah.
Something like a cheddar, a nice pairing thing is always apples at this time of year, any aged cheddar. But yeah, that's what we look for in the cheddars when we're judging them or grading them. So as I had mentioned before, we started making triple play in 2014 with 3 milks. We kind of try to get a balance. As I mentioned, you don't want too much goat just because the goat can be overpowering. Keep the goat milk a little bit on the lower side. and then you get the combination of the goat, the cow, the sheep, and all three of the flavors come out in both the cheeses, the triple play and the triple play extra innings. When it's a little milder, like I say, you get flavors of more of the cheeses from the different starter cultures. As it gets older to the triple play extra innings, you get more crystallization and you get a little more of a Gouda flavor to it again, but you still get the flavors from all of the milks. So yeah, it's interesting with the starter cultures that we use in cheddars. We typically don't see any crystals most of the time until about 5 years. Sometimes you'll get some a little before that. But with the types we use in the Goudas and the triple play, we'll typically see crystallization by the time it's about a year old, just a little bit past that, 13, 14 months. But it has to do with thermophilic starter cultures coming through and crystallizing a little faster than the mesophilic starter cultures will. So on the triple play extra innings, you get some of the flavors from that, but you get all three milks in this.
I've had many multiple milk cheeses where the flavors just kind of help each other. The sheep's milk brings out a little bit more butter. You get a little bit of tanginess from the goat's milk. But in this instance, you're actually using different cultures.
We're using different cultures also. So like in our, let's say in our blue cheeses, we have a main mesophilic starter culture that does, the acid production. That's the main kicker behind making the cheese. But you also use, depending on each blue that we make, you use 3-4 different adjunct cultures that kind of help complement the cheese and kick it where you want it, the flavor to go where you want. And that's kind of what we've done with this one. We actually add 2 starters, one a thermophile, one a mesophile, to help with the acid production and the flavor, and then an adjunct culture to help bring some of those flavors through.
I've been pairing cheese for a long time. I've been pairing foods for over 25 years. And one of the things that I ran into here was that I was getting multiple flavor characteristics. A little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of tanginess, a little bit of maybe a hint of sweet maple, things like that. So it was all over the board. I was trying to think, well, I could pick probably about 30 things and they would all work really well because it would pick out certain aspects of it. I think that this cheese is a magnificent example of being able to somebody that doesn't know what they're going to pair it with, just bring the cheese and it's going to work because there's so many directions it could take. So when I was thinking about this, I thought, okay, after our conversation yesterday, so this afternoon when I was preparing, I started to look at some of the characteristics that I would typically use. As we get into those Swiss and we get into that nuttiness, you can throw a little bit more charcuterie and meats in that. And then it just, every kind of direction I was going with the charcuterie, it just wasn't fulfilling. And so I opened up a pâté and found that this chicken liver pâté with peppercorns it made it sing. It was just so good. Yeah, it was just really fun to have that. And it's 3 little pigs. It's their black pepper corn pâté. And what I thought was, I can push it a little bit further. So I went with these little, they're mini peppers. They're sweet peppers. And so I got a little sweet pepper with it, a little pâté and the cheese on a petit toast. And then when I was thinking about what I was going to pair with it, beverage wise, I really needed something that wouldn't get in the way, but would have enough strength like the hops, because I don't want maltiness. Maltiness would go the wrong way. So Lagunitas does a daytime IPA that has some nice hops, but it's to me, it's got a really nice lagerish direction, and it pumps up enough of that to kind of balance it out. So it's really interesting to be able to work with this. I love this cheese, and I really love that what you can do with it. I think it's fabulous.
Good, good. Yeah, that's what a lot of people have found, that, you know, there are so many things out there you can pair with it. You can hardly find anything that you can't pair with it, just because it has so many different flavor profiles embedded in it.
Which is so good. Mm.
Thank you.
So anything else you'd like to say?
When we always try to come up with unique names for many of our cheeses these days. And that particular one, we put names in the hat. You know, most of my employees are family, brother, sister, nephews, nieces. And we kind of picked from that. And my brother had put triple play in, and he says, that sounds like a good one. I says, oh, I think triple threat. And my son said, you know, Dad, threat isn't a good thing to put on a food. You really shouldn't call it triple threat. So we went with triple play. And then we could use the baseball theme. So if you notice the label, it's got little baseball caps on that one.
Yes, I like that. And I like the way that the extra aging is extra innings. So that's very clever.
Right.
I like that. Yeah, this is, you know, so different in that respect. It's just such a nice, easy to eat cheese. And I think that somebody that's looking to have a unique cheese board, especially coming up on the holidays, I think that this would be really different. It would be a conversation starter to be able to say that you have that. And no one that I could ever imagine would be offended. You know, it's not one of those cheeses that, oh God, I only like this kind, or you know, I like that. There's everything in here that you would want. Swiss, Gouda, cheddar. So it's got it all. It's beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah, really enjoy that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hurdy Gurdy. So many people have heard the name Hurdy Gurdy. It's a musical instrument that's sort of like a guitar, but the name actually is not based on the musical instrument. It's based on a ski hill in Alaska that's about 20 miles from Anchorage. That's where they do extreme skiing and snowboarding. And the hill is called Hurdy Gurdy. And this is kind of an alpine style cheese.
This is really has a nice nuttiness to it. There's a little bit of sweetness and that a little nuttiness. And the nuttiness is kind of nice sweet portion to it. So when I was thinking about pairing it, I went with the Fat Toad Farm. They do a caramel, and this happens to be the Irish whiskey cream, which is just beautiful. Kind of reminds me of a 20 or 30-year-old port, because it has that nuttiness that goes through there. For a vehicle, went back to my best friends here, Effie's homemade biscuits with a pecan. Again, staying with the nuttiness and that. And then beer-wise, there's a local brewery called 81 Bay, and they do a coffee porter, which I thought would be really fun with this, with all that nuttiness and sweetness, and then getting a little bit of coffee in there. And so that was what I thought.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I would think that would bring out the nutty flavor in it.
I was thinking the nuttiness like a manchego, even though it's sheep's milk, but that nut here is just so predominant It's really a lot more than what you would find, I guess, in typical Swiss. You know, you find that cooked butter flavor in the Swiss, where this has got a little bit of acidity to it, so you get a little hint of a tang with that nuttiness, without it going that sour, which would be bad. So this has got the butter, it's got a little bit of tang, and that's why I wanted to throw a little bit of caramel with it.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is Little Boy Blue. Out of the 7 blues, this one is made just with sheep milk. In France, Roquefort is made just from sheep milk. And not that this is a true Roquefort, but I think it's got a very nice blue flavor that does bring out that typical flavor of blues. Not overpronounced, but since it is aged a year, it does have a nice stronger flavor to it. And with the sheep milk, you do get the sweetness. So yeah, it's a very nice blue cheese.
You really focus on the butter. You focus on a little bit of the mushroom. I was my first thing came across was, well, that's a little stroganoff because it's got, you know, some tang to it. It's got some butter to it. It's got a little bit of, you know, the meatiness to it. Really nice. And I love the rind on here. It's so buttery compared to a lot of times where it sees these rinds that are salted like this have a tendency to be more feta-like, but this is more blue sweet-like. Very nice rind on it. So I'm not being lazy, but I was thinking about using a honey, and typically that's what we do is honey and blue go real well together. But as I tried a couple other things on it, I really kept coming back to this. And this is Savannah Bee Company. This is their black sage honey. And so it's got a little bit more intensity of flavor, a little stronger. This really kind of stands up. You get more of that honey flavor. I just put it on a rosemary. This is Rustic Bakery. Their rosemary and olive oil. Just wanted to have a little bit of that flavor. And I would pair this up with a nice Italian Prosecco. Just, you know, a little bit of sparkling, a little bit of honey and that. And that's kind of the direction I'd go.
Yeah. Sounds like a very good pairing. Yeah, a lot of people like honey with blues. And of course, you can get different flavors, like you say, on the honeys too, and you can get the right one to pair with different styles of blue.
Yes. Yeah. Yesterday with David Gremmels, I had a blackberry honey and really intense flavor. So I was really surprised on the differences that you can get and the quality difference. But this is very, very nice. I love this blue. I think it has a really nice tang with all the other flavors, something you would expect. And again, this isn't something that somebody would say, no, I'm not a big blue fan. Well, you just really kind of have to like cheese because this is got a nice tang, a nice butter, and a little bit of mushroom. So it's not astringent. It's just nice, easy to eat blue cheese.
Right.
Yeah, great for a cheese board. It'd be excellent. We're not going to taste anymore, but there's a couple more cheeses that I have here listed. So I thought you would tell us a little bit more about these.
So one of the biggest sellers on our flavored cheeses is our pepper jack, and we make our pepper jack with just red jalapenos. Typically, most places use a blend of green and red, and we used to do it that way. We'd buy the pails, even barrels of mixed red and greens. And for some reason, apparently the greens, I suppose they aren't as ripe, so it's a lot cheaper to produce and get them out of the, get them into our hands faster. So it got to the point where the mixtures were about, instead of 50-50 reds and greens, got to 60-40 greens over reds. And then it got to 80 and 20. And then it got to where all you'd have is a few little spots of red. And so we decided we were going to go with all reds because we liked the little bit sweeter flavor. Of course, when you get some seeds, you get a little bit more heat from the reds, but it leaves a lot more flavor in the cheese. So that's why we went with all reds in our pepper jack. And we typically try to add enough peppers. We just make a jalapeno for our Dane County Farmers Market. We have made some cheddar curd with some ghost peppers, which are really hot, but we haven't made any blocks of that hot of peppers. I know some other places do, but we do have a lot of sales on the jalapeno peppers.
I have to say that every, I'm not quite sure what year you started making this next cheese, but every year at the American Cheese Society, you've won awards with this, because I'll be sitting in the audience at the award ceremony and hear this, and everybody just cheers, because I think it has the best name that you could name a cheese.
That's right.
I think that you win with the name of the cheese.
Well, thank you. So yes, I actually came up with the name of this cheese 2 years before I came up with the cheese that fit it. So it's a mixture of all three. You can see in the title, "You Calf to Be Kidding," and it's a blue cheese with a mix of sheep, cow, and goat. And like Michael said, the very first time we entered it at the American Cheese Society, the announcer tried to read it and couldn't quite get through all of it without laughing at the name. So yeah, it has won an award numerous times. It's a very nice cheese. Again, it's got all three milks. It does have the sheep like the little boy does have some goat like the Barneveld, and then of course the cow milk like our other four blues. And when you eat this cheese, all of the flavor notes do come through again, kind of like the triple play. You get some of everything, but you get a nice blue flavor, which you can pair with a lot of things again. Of course, with blues, honey is always a good pair, but there are a lot of other things, a lot of crackers, a lot of other things that do pair with it also.
Yeah, I remember, I'm trying to think, I don't know if it was Seattle or where it was, John Greeley, who did a tremendous amount of the judging information and of course emceeing along there, cracking up on stage, you know, when he was trying to pronounce this. And it's just one of those things is you hear it, and you, no matter where you are in the building, you just like, what was that? It was such a great name.
Yep, yep.
I really love that.
Got to keep up with the names that get people's attention, right?
Exactly, exactly. All right, so now we kind of talk about your 10-year cheddar.
So, as I've said, we've been aging cheddars even when we were out at Buck Grove. Started making cheddar when I was at Barneville Cheese Company. When we bought the plant in Mineral Point, we decided we'd age some cheese to 5 and 7 years. And after that, we went to 10, 12, 15, 20. Our 10-year cheddar, we entered in the 2006 ACS contest and it won first place. I believe it's the oldest cheddar to ever win a first place at the American Cheese Society or any of the contests I've heard. But it is a very nice cheese. It has a lot of nice calcium lactate crystals, but a nice creamy flavor. Most of that acidic flavor that you would see in 3, 4, 5 year has all been basically used up. It isn't acidic anymore. It's a nice, clean cheddar flavor to it.
And then you have the next one.
So this is our 15-year cheddar. And actually I sent one with an old label, but the 15 does show better on this particular label. It's, you know, the first batch we put out in 2009. We were at low production at the time, and I had just hired my brother Jerry the year before. He had retired from the Army after 25 years, and he was working for me. And my wife and I had taken a trip soon before this, and then Jerry and his wife took a trip when we released this. And maybe it was poor planning on my part, but I couldn't keep up with the phone calls. And so it got to a point where I couldn't answer the phone, and just decided just let them go to the messages. My wife and I would try to answer them during the night, you know, after making cheese, and then get back to everybody. And I won't mention whose name had my cell phone and gave it out to a reporter. And I get this call on my cell phone because I very seldom get that out. And I said, "How did you get this?" And he mentioned who he got it from. I'm going to have to talk to him about that. I wouldn't have even answered at that point, but it was a national newspaper that wanted to put something in about the 15-year cheddar. It was the first time anybody had ever had anything like this, and first time we had released it. And, you know, once it was in Milwaukee Journal Sentinel and the Madison State Journal and then national news, we couldn't keep up, and it was sold out within 5 or 6 days. That was the pre-books. We couldn't get it all shipped at that point, but we did have it sold in no time. It was a very good cheese. It's excellent cheese. We typically have enough in a batch we release. We'll be releasing one the end of this month, and typically that batch is sold out by Christmas time. Usually we've had, since 2009, we had one batch in there in January of 2010, and then we've had one batch ever since, released every October. This year we do have 2 batches. We're hoping to keep up with demand because it's very hard. Everybody wants to order at that time and kind of pre-books it. So the 15-year is sought after by many restaurants and many individuals.
That's fabulous with the different cheeses. And again, this is just a small sampling of the 60 to 70 cheeses that you do. So it's really cool. And I'm glad that I got an opportunity to be able to meet with you and spend a little bit of time. I've always admired a lot of work that you've done, and never really had an opportunity to be able to tell you how much I appreciate what you do and the quality of the cheeses. And it's just been a great chance to be able to meet you, and also to enjoy a lot of your cheeses. They're so easy to pair with. You know, you make my my pairing adventure very, very simple. And I just think that coming up with the holidays and these cheeses would make an amazing cheese board coming up. So I commend your high quality and uniqueness, in addition to just great cheese. Thanks, Tony.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Michael. And thank you for having me. And it's been nice working with you. I'm glad you had a good time pairing all of our cheeses and trying our cheeses.
I did. It was just wonderful. Just a really nice experience, and being able to go just about any direction that you want to go. They're very fun to work with. So I think anybody that's building a cheese board can really just grab some stuff and not really have to worry about, does this work perfectly together? Because they just, they're just kind of like I guess a cheese that goes well with just about everything. So that's a good thing to have happen.
Well, thank you.
So anything else you'd like to say before we head out?
Just thank you to my dairy farmers, and thank you to the dairy farmers of Wisconsin for sponsoring all of this.
I greatly appreciate it as well. I thank the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin as being one of the sponsors today, and the great work that they do in being able to get the word out to the people that Wisconsin makes some of the best world-class cheeses in the world. And I'm really happy to, be part of their family. So again, thank you so much for being able to come out. And this will be, this is recorded, so it'll be on my YouTube channel, Michael Landis Cheese, in the next few days, along with the pairings that I did and additional information. So those that want to purchase the cheeses, it's up on your website. I'll have that listed there so they could order along and taste along with us.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. It was good meeting you, Tony. Thanks so much.
Yep. Bye now.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.